My community's beloved retired politician orchestrated a campaign against an innocent man while his wife served his prison sentence. When I found his old laptop full of blackmail evidence and he tried to run me out of town, my 4-year-old unleashed her video collection at the neighborhood party. My baby girl was 4 years old when I found out an ex-convict was moving into our neighborhood. He looked nerdy, the type of guy popular kids would force to do their homework. I figured he was arrested for doing tax evasion, or maybe stealing someone's chessboard, lol. So when Terrence, my next-door neighbor, told me that Don had been arrested for beating his own infant in a fit of rage, my heart dropped. I was ready to show up at his door and wail on him until he was nothing but a vegetable in a hospital bed. But unfortunately, I had to be a good role model to my daughter, so I settled for avoiding him at all costs. And the whole neighborhood did too. But there was one person that was happy to talk to him, and somehow, that was my next-door neighbor, Terrence. I caught him walking out of Don's, the ex-convict, home one day, with a huge smile plastered on his face. "I want you to think of me as the neighborhood sacrifice," he said with a completely straight face. "Everyone deserves a chance at redemption, and I can be that person for him, you know?" Truthfully, I had no idea what the F he was talking about, but I figured that maybe he was just a better person than me, and shrugged it off. But something strange started happening. Every morning I'd see Terrence and Don sitting together in the park, talking like old friends. Meanwhile, Terrence was constantly blowing up the village's WhatsApp group chat about how evil Don was, how we needed to stay away from him at all costs. I figured I couldn't be the only one finding his behavior at least a little strange. So one evening, I texted my daughter's best friend's mom to come over. She lived nearby, and we usually had the same opinions about things. As soon as Liliana sat at the kitchen table, she blurted out, "This is about Don and Terrence, right?" I couldn't even hold back my laughter. Our thoughts were always synced up. "So I know what you're thinking," she continued. And at first I was weirded out. But then someone told me that 10 years ago, Terrence's ex-wife hit their baby to death. I think he's acting out of trauma. Like, maybe he's trying to heal his past wound with forgiveness. Looking back, I knew something was wrong. But Terrence was a retired politician, so it made sense to assume the best intentions. Or so I thought, because that's when we had the parents' night out. You see, every second year, the parents of my daughter's school meet up in the local bar. Nothing crazy ever happens. Just a few beer bottles, cocktails, laughing about how much our kids hate homework. Terrence wasn't even a parent, but the neighborhood loved him so much that he was always invited anyway. But this time was different. He was downing beer after beer, his alcohol breath practically stenching up the entire table. No one was saying anything, just glaring at each other, wondering if his weird behavior was somehow linked to Don. And at around 11 p.m., we got our answer. Everyone was silent when he spoke, his words slurring together. "Guys, you know, Don isn't who you think he is. He was framed by his ex-wife. He didn't actually commit the crime." I furrowed my eyebrows, because earlier that day, Terrence was texting the group chat about how Don was a dangerous unaliver. Luckily, Liliana lightly tapped his arm, so he kept going. "Yeah, so, I have a confession to make. All the stuff I said he did was actually me, and now my ex-wife is rotting in prison for the crimes I committed." He then burst into tears before repeating the words, "I'm sorry," over and over. I swear I thought he was pranking us, but that's when he started wailing about what a horrible person he was, how he had abused his power, and he didn't deserve to live. Soon, I was going to make his wish come true. I stormed out of the bar, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. My hands were shaking as I fumbled for my car keys. The cool night air hit my face, but did nothing to calm the rage burning through my veins. Terrence had unalived a baby, his own baby, and he'd been walking around our neighborhood like some kind of saint while an innocent man suffered. My phone buzzed. Liliana. I ignored it and started walking toward my car, but she caught up to me in the parking lot. She grabbed my arm and spun me around. Her face was pale, mascara smudged from crying. "Wait," she said, breathing hard. "We need to think about this. We can't just react." I yanked my arm away. "Think about what?" "He confessed. He unalived his baby and framed his wife." I know. She held up her hands. "But we need evidence. Real evidence, not just a hammered confession." My phone buzzed again, then again. I pulled it out to see the neighborhood group chat exploding with messages. People who'd been at the bar were already spreading the news. But as I scrolled, I noticed something strange. Terrence was posting too, claiming he'd been joking, that people misunderstood his dark humor. "See?" Liliana pointed at my screen. "He's already covering his tracks. If we're going to expose him, we need to be smart about it." She was right. I took a deep breath and nodded. We decided to meet at my house the next morning to figure out our next move. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Terrence's face, that friendly smile that had fooled us all. When morning came, I was exhausted but determined. Liliana arrived at 8 a.m. sharp with her laptop. We sat at my kitchen table while my daughter watched cartoons in the living room. "I've been thinking," Liliana said, opening her laptop. "Terrence has been spending a lot of time with Don. What if he's been manipulating him somehow?" We spent the next few hours researching everything we could find about Terrence's past. Most of it was typical politician stuff, ribbon cuttings, community events, campaign photos. But then, Liliana found an old news article from 11 years ago about his wife's arrest. The details matched what he'd confessed, except the roles were reversed. "We need to talk to Don," I said. Liliana shook her head. "Too risky. If Terrence finds out we're investigating him, She was interrupted by a knock at the door. My heart jumped. Through the peephole, I saw it was Mrs. Chen from down the street. She was holding a cardboard box. "Sorry to bother you," she said when I opened the door, "but I'm having a garage sale next weekend. Found this box of old electronics in my attic. Thought maybe you'd want first dibs." I was about to politely decline when I noticed a laptop at the bottom of the box. It looked familiar. Then I saw the faded campaign sticker on the corner. Terrence's campaign sticker. "Where did you get this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "Oh, Terrence gave me a bunch of stuff to store years ago when he was renovating. Said I could sell it whenever. He probably forgot about it. I bought the whole box for $20. As soon as Mrs. Chen left, Liliana and I opened the laptop. It was dead, but Liliana had a compatible charger in her car. While we waited for it to boot up, my daughter came into the kitchen. "Mommy, can I have a snack?" I got her some crackers and juice, trying to act normal while my heart raced. The laptop finally came to life. It was password protected, but Liliana tried a few obvious choices. His birth date, his campaign slogan. Then, on a hunch, she typed redemption. The desktop appeared. We found emails, hundreds of them. Most were old campaign correspondence, but buried in a folder labeled personal were messages between Terrence and someone named Kay. As we read, the truth became clear. Kay was his ex-wife, writing from prison. She'd been blackmailing him for years, demanding money for her commissary account, or she'd tell authorities what really happened to their baby. "This is it," Liliana whispered. "This is our evidence." I was about to agree when we heard footsteps on my porch. Through the window, I saw Terrence approaching my front door. Liliana slammed the laptop shut and shoved it under some newspapers just as he knocked. "Hide this," I whispered, pushing the laptop toward her. She grabbed it and ducked into the pantry. I opened the door, trying to control my expression. Terrence stood there in his usual khakis and polo shirt, looking concerned. "Hey there," he said. "I wanted to apologize for last night. I had way too much to drink. Said some crazy things. It's okay," I managed. His eyes scanned past me into the house. "Is Liliana here?" I saw her car outside. She just stopped by to borrow some flour. He nodded slowly, but his eyes kept searching. Then they landed on the box of electronics on my counter. His face changed for just a second before the friendly mask slipped back on. "Well, I should let you get back to your morning, but hey, quick question. Did Mrs. Chen stop by here? She mentioned she was doing a garage sale." My mouth went dry. "No, haven't seen her." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Okay, well, if you see her, let her know I'm looking for some old things I stored at her place. Important documents and such." After he left, Liliana emerged from the pantry clutching the laptop. We both knew we were in danger now. Terrence would figure out we had his laptop soon enough. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. I found my mailbox open one morning, though nothing seemed missing. My daughter mentioned seeing Mr. Terrence outside late at night, but when I checked our security camera, that footage was mysteriously corrupted. Then the letters started. Handwritten notes in my mailbox, supposedly from Don, saying he was watching us, that he knew where my daughter went to school. I knew immediately they were fake. The handwriting was too neat, too deliberate. But when I showed them to other neighbors, they believed them. "We need to go to the police," Liliana said when I showed her the latest letter. But when we tried to copy the emails from Terrence's laptop, we discovered they'd been remotely deleted. The laptop was completely wiped. Liliana checked her security camera footage from the night I'd seen Terrence outside. It had been deleted too, replaced with a loop of empty street. "He must have connections from his political days," Liliana said. "Someone at the tech company." Things escalated quickly after that. I got a call from Child Services saying they'd received anonymous reports about my parenting. A social worker showed up unannounced, inspecting my home while my daughter cried, scared and confused. They found nothing wrong, but the visits continued. I started watching Terrence more carefully. Every morning, he still met Don at the park. They'd sit on the same bench, Terrence always bringing 2 cups of coffee. One day, I watched from my car as Don drank his coffee and became increasingly agitated, gesturing wildly, raising his voice. Other people in the park started staring, moving their children away. That's when it clicked. Terrence was drugging him, making him appear unstable in public to support the narrative that Don was dangerous. I confronted Terrence that evening. I waited until he was alone in his garage and walked right in. "I know what you're doing to Don," I said. He didn't even look surprised. He set down the tool he was holding and smiled. "I don't know what you mean. The coffee. You're drugging him." He laughed. "That's quite an accusation. Do you have any proof?" I didn't, and he knew it. But then he pulled out his phone and played a recording. It was my voice, edited and spliced together, making threats against Don. Things I'd never said, conversations that never happened. "Amazing what technology can do these days," he said. "Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to move, take your daughter and leave this neighborhood, or I'll release these recordings and tell everyone you're the real danger. Who do you think they'll believe? The respected retired politician or the hysterical single mother?" I left his garage shaking with rage and fear. But when I got home, my daughter was sitting at the kitchen table with her tablet, drawing pictures. "Mommy, look," she said, showing me her screen. But instead of drawings, there was a video playing. "I've been recording Mr. Terrence when he comes over. He scares me." I watched in shock as the video showed Terrence in our backyard at night, talking to himself. He was rehearsing conversations, practicing his lies. In one video, he clearly said, "I unalived our baby during the campaign. The stress was too much, but nobody will ever believe Don or my ex-wife over me." My daughter had been recording him for weeks. She showed me video after video photos stored in her tablet's photo app. The evidence we needed had been in my house all along. The morning of the party dawned bright and clear. The neighborhood buzzed with preparation. Tables appeared on lawns, grills fired up, children ran between houses with excitement. Normal suburban life, except for the undercurrent of tension only a few of us felt. Terrence arrived early, as expected. He glad-handed everyone, the perfect politician even in retirement. Don sat alone at a picnic table, still ostracized despite his recent clarity. I kept my daughter close, her tablet tucked safely in my bag. As the afternoon wore on, Terrence took his usual position near the speaker system. He loved giving impromptu speeches at these gatherings, and today was no different. He grabbed the microphone, launching into remarks about community safety, about protecting our children. His words grew darker as he gestured toward Don. He painted a picture of escalating danger, of a neighborhood under threat. People listened uncomfortably, torn between trust in Terrence and growing doubts about his narrative. That's when my daughter tugged my hand. It was time. She took her tablet and ran toward the speaker system. Terrence saw her coming, confusion flickering across his face. Before he could react, she'd connected the tablet. His voice suddenly boomed across the park, but not from the microphone. I unalived our baby during the campaign. The stress was too much, but nobody will ever believe Don or my ex-wife over me. The crowd froze. Terrence's face went white as his recorded voice continued. Video after video played through the speakers. Him admitting to drugging Don, describing how he'd framed his wife, planning harassment campaigns. Every confession, every revelation, broadcast to the entire neighborhood. Terrence lunged toward my daughter, desperate to stop the playback, but in his panic, he tripped over a cooler. The crack of his ankle breaking was audible even over his recorded confessions. He writhed on the ground while the truth continued pouring out. Don stood slowly, his voice strong for the first time in months. He confirmed everything, adding details about Terrence's manipulation, the drugged coffee, the gaslighting, the systematic destruction of his attempts at redemption. Without that morning's dose affecting him, his testimony was clear, credible, devastating. The police arrived to find Terrence still on the ground, surrounded by neighbors who finally saw him clearly. The recordings provided probable cause for immediate arrest. As they led him away, his mask finally slipped completely. The friendly politician was gone, replaced by someone twisted with rage and fear. The investigation that followed uncovered layers of deception spanning years. Financial records showed payments to witnesses. Phone records revealed threatening calls. Former staff members came forward with stories they'd been too frightened to tell before. The house of cards collapsed completely. Terrence's ex-wife was released after 11 years of wrongful imprisonment. Her story made regional news, though we kept the coverage limited to protect everyone's privacy. She reunited with family who'd believed the worst about her, finally vindicated, but forever changed by the injustice. Don left the neighborhood a few months later, seeking a fresh start somewhere his past wouldn't define him. Before leaving, he thanked me, and especially my daughter. Her innocent bravery had saved him from a nightmare of manipulation and false accusations. The neighborhood slowly healed, though scars remained. We'd learned hard lessons about trust, about the dangers of charismatic authority, about looking deeper than surface presentations. The Whisper network that had once spread poison now carried more thoughtful conversations about vigilance and verification. My daughter returned to normal 4-year-old life, using her tablet for games and drawings instead of evidence gathering. The nightmares faded as Terrence's presence became just a bad memory. Children are resilient, but I knew this experience had changed us both. Terrence's house stood empty for months before finally selling to a young family who knew nothing of its history. Sometimes I wondered if I should warn them, tell them about the man who'd lived there, but the past was past. They deserved to make their own memories without the shadow of his crimes. Life moved forward, different but not destroyed. We'd survived a master manipulator, exposed a killer hiding behind respectability. The neighborhood was quieter now, more cautious, but also more genuine. The fake friendliness was gone, replaced by real connections forged through shared adversity. I still check my locks twice each night, still position cameras to cover every angle. Some habits born from fear become permanent safeguards, but I no longer jump at shadows or question every interaction. Terrence had tried to poison our lives with suspicion. We'd chosen trust instead, carefully given, but genuine. The coffee shop where Terrence had met Don each morning removed the bench they'd used. Not officially, but it kept breaking, getting vandalized, until they gave up replacing it. The community had its own way of erasing painful memories while keeping important lessons. My daughter once asked if Mr. Terrence was sorry for being mean. I told her some people get so good at pretending that they forget what's real. She seemed satisfied with that explanation, returning to her coloring. The simple wisdom of children often cuts through adult complications. Looking at that empty house now, I felt not triumph, but relief. We'd prevented more victims, saved Don from continued torture, freed an innocent woman from prison. The cost had been high. Friendships strained, security shattered, innocence lost. But justice, however messy, had prevailed. The for sale sign finally came down last week. New owners, new beginning. The neighborhood watched them move in with cautious optimism. We'd learned to look deeper, ask questions, trust, but verify. Terrence's legacy, ironically, was was making us better neighbors by showing us the worst. I closed the curtain, done with remembering. My daughter called from the living room, wanting help with a puzzle. Normal life, precious in its simplicity. We'd earned this peace through vigilance and courage, mostly hers, the accidental bravery of a scared child who'd pressed record at the right moments. The new family moved in on a Tuesday. I watched from my window as they carried boxes inside, their young son running around the yard with the same carefree energy my daughter once had. Part of me wanted to warn them, but what would I say? That a killer had lived there? That the friendly, retired politician who'd charmed everyone was actually a monster? They deserved to start fresh. My daughter tugged at my sleeve. She wanted to go introduce herself to the new boy. I hesitated, then nodded. We walked across the lawn together, her small hand in mine. The mother smiled warmly as we approached, introducing herself as Vita. Her husband, McJonathan, waved from the moving truck. "Welcome to the neighborhood," I said, keeping my voice steady. My daughter immediately started chatting with their son about his toy dinosaurs. Normal neighborhood interactions. No hint of the darkness that had touched this place. That evening, Liliana called. Her voice sounded stronger than it had in months. She and her husband were working through their trust issues, attending counseling together. The damage Terrence had caused ran deep, but they were fighting to repair it. She mentioned that several other neighbors were doing the same, quietly dealing with the aftermath of his manipulations. The next morning, I noticed something at the park. The bench where Terrence had met Don every morning had been removed overnight. In its place, someone had planted a small garden, flowers already beginning to bloom. No plaque, no explanation, just beauty where poison had been. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. My heart raced until I read it. Don, letting me know he'd settled into his new town. He'd found work at a local library, was attending support meetings for people wrongly accused of crimes. He thanked me again for believing him when no one else would. Child Services made their final visit that week. The social worker, a kind woman named Alexandra, apologized for the repeated intrusions. She explained that they'd traced all the anonymous reports back to Terrence. My file would be sealed, marked as harassment by a third party. My daughter barely noticed her presence, too busy with her coloring books. I returned to work, trying to establish normalcy. My co-workers had heard pieces of the story, but I kept details minimal. The less said, the better. My boss pulled me aside one afternoon, mentioning that the strange calls about my mental health had stopped. He'd never believe them anyway, he assured me. At the grocery store, I ran into Mrs. Chen. She grabbed my arm gently, tears in her eyes. She apologized for unknowingly storing Terrence's laptop, for being part of his deception even innocently. I told her she'd helped expose him, that her garage sale had been the turning point. She seemed relieved, but still carried guilt. The neighborhood WhatsApp group had gone quiet. People were afraid to post, unsure who to trust. One evening, someone shared a photo of their cat. Then another person posted about a lost bicycle. Slowly, carefully, we were learning to communicate again without Terrence's poison influencing every interaction. My daughter started having playdates again. Other parents, initially hesitant, began accepting invitations. During one gathering, a mother quietly thanked me. She'd always felt something was off about Terrence, but had been too afraid to speak up. His arrest had validated years of unease. I discovered Terrence had been intercepting more than just mail. The local postal worker mentioned that he'd filed several change of address forms for neighbors, redirecting important documents. It took weeks to sort out the mess. Everyone checking credit reports, confirming bank statements hadn't been tampered with. Liliana's teenage son, the one who'd helped with the speaker system, started teaching neighborhood kids about internet safety. He showed them how Terrence had manipulated digital evidence, how to protect their privacy. The lessons were practical, but carried deeper meaning, teaching vigilance without paranoia. One night, my security cameras caught movement. My heart pounded until I realized it was just a raccoon, but the fear lingered. Every shadow could be a threat, every unexpected visitor a potential danger. Terrence was in prison, but his impact remained. The prosecutor called with updates occasionally. Terrence's ex-wife was adjusting to freedom, living with her sister while rebuilding her life. She'd lost 11 years, missed her child's entire life, been branded a baby killer. No amount of justice could restore that time. My daughter asked fewer questions as weeks passed. The tablet she'd used to record Terrence sat unused in a drawer. I'd saved the videos to multiple secure locations, evidence for the trial, but she showed no interest in it anymore. She'd moved on in the way only children can. The neighborhood watch meetings resumed, but with a different tone. Instead of fear-mongering about Don, we discussed actual safety measures, better lighting, communication protocols, how to verify concerning reports before acting on them. We'd learned the danger of blind trust. I found myself checking on Vita and McJonathan occasionally. Not intrusively, just neighborly concern. They seemed to be settling in well, unaware of their home's history. Their son played in the same yard where Terrence had practiced his lies. During a routine pediatrician visit, the doctor mentioned my daughter seemed well-adjusted despite recent events. News had spread even to medical professionals. I kept my response brief, focusing on her resilience rather than the trauma. The empty coffee shop where I'd met Liliana for secret strategy sessions became our regular spot. We met monthly now, not to plan or investigate, but simply to talk, to process what we'd been through, to remind ourselves that we'd survived. Terrence's trial date was set for spring. The prosecutor warned it would be lengthy, complex. His political connections were working to minimize charges, but the evidence was overwhelming. My daughter's videos would be key testimony. She wouldn't have to appear, thankfully. I started sleeping better, though never as soundly as before. Every creak in the house made me alert. Every unexpected knock set my heart racing, but I was functioning, working, raising my daughter, moving forward even if I couldn't move past. The realtor who'd sold Terrence's house mentioned that several potential buyers had backed out after Googling the address. The story had made regional news briefly, but Vida and McJonathan either hadn't searched or hadn't cared. Sometimes ignorance was a blessing. My landlord renewed my lease without question. The anonymous complaints had stopped, and he'd realized they were harassment. He even apologized for considering them, offering a small rent reduction for the trouble. I accepted gratefully. Don sent another message, this time with a photo. Him at his library job, surrounded by books, looking peaceful. He'd joined a book club, was making friends who knew nothing of his past. The fresh start he'd deserved from the beginning. My daughter's preschool removed the supervised pickup requirement. Her teacher apologized profusely, explaining they'd had to follow protocol with the reports. She mentioned my daughter had been drawing pictures of our house with extra locks on the doors. Children process trauma in their own ways. The neighborhood Halloween approached differently that year. People were cautious about decorations, about whose houses to visit. The unspoken agreement was to keep things simple, safe. No one mentioned why, but we all understood. Liliana's marriage survived, though changed. She told me they'd established new boundaries, new communication rules. The trust Terrence had damaged was slowly rebuilding, but the scars remained. She'd stopped apologizing for protecting her marriage during the worst of it. I ran into the bartender from Parents' Night at the grocery store. He avoided eye contact, quickly changing aisles. Whether Terrence had paid or threatened him into silence, the guilt was evident. Another life touched by manipulation. My daughter made a new friend at the park, a girl whose family had recently moved to the area. Watching them play, I fought the urge to warn the other mother about everyone, to share the neighborhood's dark history. But that was Terrence's legacy talking, spreading fear and suspicion. The antique clock that had given Terrence away was found during the investigation, seized as evidence. Such a small detail that had started his unraveling. He'd been so careful, except for that one sloppy moment, letting me hear its distinctive chime. Winter came early that year. The park where everything had exploded at the block party lay covered in snow. Families still gathered there, but cautiously. The speaker system had been removed, replaced with a simple playground edition. No more impromptu speeches. Terrence's ex-wife reached out through the prosecutor. She wanted to thank me, but understood if I preferred no contact. I sent back a simple message of support. We were connected by trauma, but that didn't mean we needed to remain linked. My daughter turned 5 quietly. Just family, no big party. She didn't ask why, seemed content with cake and presents at home. The innocence that had saved us was slowly returning, though I knew she'd carry memories forever. The investigation revealed more victims, former staff members who'd been threatened into silence, community members who'd questioned Terrence and faced systematic harassment. Our neighborhood wasn't unique in his manipulation, just the place where it finally ended. I started seeing a therapist, though I kept it private. Processing trauma while maintaining strength for my daughter was exhausting. The therapist specialized in victims of psychological manipulation. I wasn't alone in needing help. McJonathan knocked on my door one evening, asking about good contractors. They were renovating the kitchen, making the house truly theirs. I gave him some names, didn't mention that Terrence had used the same ones. Some histories didn't need sharing. The trial began in March. I testified via video link, my daughter's recordings playing for the jury. Terrence sat stone-faced as his own words condemned him. His ex-wife testified in person, 11 years of wrongful imprisonment giving her strength. The verdict came quickly. Guilty on all counts. Life in prison with no possibility of parole. The judge called it one of the most calculated cases of manipulation and abuse of power she'd seen. Justice, finally, though it couldn't undo the damage. Don sent a final message after the verdict. He was engaged now, building a real life. He thanked me one last time, then said he was deleting this number. Moving forward meant letting go of even the positive connections to that dark time.